I'm going to have to be doing more campaigns each year than I've been doing so far. How do I do that without making my audience feel like I'm constantly asking them to contribute to things?
When you watch what's going on Kickstarter, do you see creators that seem to be doing well with launching more often than you're launching?
Many years ago, when I was trying to be a freelance copy editor in another life, I had a mentor who told me that the most important thing to do as someone trying to get work from people is to remind them that you exist. And I think that that fully applies to building an audience.
We have the writer and creator of the comic No Spells Last Forever. She's also the co-creator of an award-winning science fiction comedy web series called My Human Experience. She's a longtime comics fan. She's written and reported for comics for a number of media outlets, including Marvel, DC Comics, Women Write About Comics, Fembot Magazine, and a whole lot more. Welcome back, Sarah Cooke. How are you doing, Sarah?
Doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you joining the boys tonight. Can you share what's on your mind?
So the thing I've been thinking about as far as kind of trying to move forward, and we were talking about kind of trying to level up, and so far my crowdfunding has been focused on just on No Spell. And I've had some other smaller projects, anthologies, shorts and things in anthologies, but my crowdfunding has just been No Spell related. But I have a couple of other projects that I'm working on that I'm kind of in the process of writing or finalizing that I would like to bring into the world in the not too distant future. And I guess my question is, how do I, in order to do that, obviously I'm going to have to be doing more campaigns each year than I've been doing so far. How do I do that without making my audience feel like I'm constantly asking them to contribute to things? Like, how do I ramp it up how do I take it up above kind of what they're used to hearing, how often they're used to hearing from me with campaigns? I think a lot of it probably has to do with reaching new audiences. One of them is a sci-fi that I'm working on with lesser known comics. And so one of the things that I'm doing there is I'm doing a sci-fi anthology with them, with kind of the goal being to try to reach some of their audience and try to reach some people who are interested in sci-fi specifically. No Spell is more contemporary fantasy. So I suspect that that's part of the key. It's just kind of trying to grow my audience or grow new audiences that I think are going to be interested specifically in the kinds of projects that these are. But I guess trying to decide what my next steps should be for that. And then as far as with the audience I've already built up, how do I not?
I'm going to open it up in just a second to the group, but I just want you, when you think about launching more projects and the reaction from your audience, what in your mind is like the worst case scenario of what your backers would be thinking about when you are launching 5 times as many projects next year as this year? Like, what's the story in your head that backers are saying?
I think it's just that, like, she's always coming to us asking for money. Like, I just backed another campaign and she's already trying to promote another one.
Okay. Other questions for Sarah before we dive into sharing our insights and thoughts? Yeah, Caleb.
How often do you communicate with your backers? Do you have an email list? And how often are you communicating with them outside of Kickstarter?
Yeah, I do. I have a Substack, and a lot of my previous backers have subscribed to it. And I do monthly or weekly newsletters through the Substack.
Perfect.
What other outlets do you have? I'm assuming social media.
Yeah, it's mostly Substack and social media. Instagram, probably mostly. I've been doing a little bit of YouTube stuff, but right now mostly Substack and social.
And this is your 3rd issue, right? And you're doing like what, 1 a year-ish?
It's been 1 a year. I'd love to get it up to maybe 2 a year next year, but I don't know, especially if I have other projects that I'm trying to get out. I don't know.
How many more projects do you plan on launching that are not involved with this particular title? And are you launching any that are kind of like a spinoff or related to this world? basically, like, I guess, what are the differences per project? You said you have this one, you have the sci-fi one. Is there another one, or like how what's that look like as far as your roadmap?
Yeah, there's another one. And some of these I'm gonna try to pitch around to and see if anything happens to come from any of that. I don't have anything specifically related to No Spell. I have ideas for things that I would maybe like to do eventually, but I don't have anything in the works right now.
Okay. One more question. When you look, I know you pay attention because you've done writing in comics, you've done media, you are involved in creator groups. When you watch what's going on Kickstarter, do you tend to do you see creators that are launching more that seem to be doing well with launching more often than you're launching?
I I do, and I think I mean, it makes sense to me that the more campaigns you do, the more you continue to expand your audience. And I see people out there who seem to be launching all the time, but seem to be doing well. And I think my fear is that kind of where my mind goes sometimes when I see those creators is like, oh, well, they just must have like a way larger audience than me. So of course they can do that because it's not the same people backing each time. And it's not all the same people backing for me each time, but they have a wider audience to draw from. And so I guess it kind of feels a little bit like a chicken and the egg kind of question.
Yeah.
Because you grow your audience each time you launch, but you have to have enough of an audience to support these new launches. So that's where I kind of get stuck in the weeds, I think.
I have another question. Besides Kickstarter, besides social media, besides your email list, do you go to cons? How else are you building your audience besides like the anthologies, or are you doing anything outside of the interwebs?
I have gone to some cons. I haven't done a ton of it yet because mostly what I've done has been local, largely because of just cost of traveling. But I have done a little bit of that. I'd like to do more cons. Mostly what I've been doing has been online.
So one more question for Sarah, and then I'm actually going to ask Caleb too. Right now, you're at one launch a year. You're considering going to 2 next year. At how many launches per year do you start to really feel that fear that, oh, that's too much for my audience? Like, does 2 get you scared, or is it more than that you start to?
2 feels okay. I think when I start to get into like 3 or 4 or 5, that starts to feel like I would love, just for myself, I'd love to be doing that many, but that's when I start to get nervous.
Yeah. So Caleb, you had mentioned at the end of your hot seat, so I wanted to go, yeah, like where are you at in terms of like, how many times did you launch last year? How many times are you on track to launch this year? And where's the number that you start to get, oh, is that too much?
I launched, I think, 7 times last year, and I'm trying to launch 10 this year. And the number where I wonder if it's too much is, can I start doing overlapping campaigns? That's my threshold right now. And I have more to say about that. I don't want to.
But I love this because right here in this group, 2 creators with the same fear, but wildly different in terms of the actual quantity. And I think that is the creative world in a nutshell. Who wants to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I'll run with it. Yeah, so like when it comes to like, putting out more, like I started out with 1 a year, then went to a year. Last year was my first time doing 4 a year. I plan on doing 4 again this year. I would love to go more. I would love to be like where, Caleb is right now, as far as like putting out like the amount. I'm stuck waiting on art. Matter of fact, I call her Rookie of the Year, but she's probably into her year 2 now. But Carissa Grant, she's putting out Worthy Chaos Redemption 1 a month. And she's been doing it since like a year ago, October. And I'm like, and she's new on the scene. She doesn't have a huge audience, but she's building as she goes. But like her artist is so fast and her stories are already written out and done. Like, I'm like blown away how fast she's getting these books out. And like, she's immediately like, boom, I'm on my pre-launch. You just got your book right like a week after the campaign ended. I mean, she like even prints her books before the campaigns go live.
Mhm.
So I mean, like, burnout, I don't think I think that's more of a mental issue, because like we all have that like fear that we're going to lose our audience. We might lose some along the way, but there's a lot of reasons for that. And that might not because they're burnt out because you just launched another campaign. Again, and crossing over with the different things, like if you have 3 different genres that you're about to launch, again, like I was saying to Caleb, like you're going to have these different buckets and you're going to have very little drops from y'all or from all 3 of them that you're getting, into these buckets that you're filling these audience members with. So as long as you're continually filling these buckets with new audience members who want those particular stories, you'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which I think that makes sense. And that's kind of what I feel like I need to be doing more of, is like with the reaching out to trying to build an audience who would be more interested in kind of the sci-fi, and there's going to be some crossover, but there will be some people who are just interested in that and might not be as interested in no spell because it's a different genre. So maybe that's kind of how I do it without just burning out the same group of people.
And that's kind of like the way, like, like retailers sending out emails, right? They, with new, email marketing tactics, they're segmenting their people too. So like, and this is what I started doing with Nightwolf and Snowpaw as well, is I have a tag that, if they're a Snowpaw backer or a Nightwolf backer, I will, mail more to, if I'm live with Nightwolf, I'll mail more to the Nightwolf people, but then occasionally just drop a few over here. Like it's kind of the same thing. I have a totally different email list built up for my Wolfpack pups that I, don't touch entirely at all when it comes to the comics anymore. Like now they're both kind of living on their own, you know what I mean? Like, so that's kind of like things you have to think about too when you're building your audiences for different books, is how do you want to segment that out? And then maybe drop a little bit over here just to see if they bite.
Yeah.
Comment came in from Elijah Bohr. He said, when I find a creator I love, I want more from them. I don't see creative output from them as them ask for money, but as an opportunity to enjoy their creative output. And I'd also say, like, we are in unique positions where we're in the world of comics. Growing up, I wanted my favorite writers or my favorite characters or my favorite artists, like, the more often they came out, the more excited I was. And, and sometimes a month was too long to go without supporting it. Now, yes, on the one hand, like the costs and paying for shipping and other things, like sometimes it's hard to back every project that we like, and there's always going to be some drop off. But I also think that many of those creators that do launch more often have realized that Kickstarter is actually one of their best audience builders, and the launch, what goes into a launch, the fact that you're out here on podcast, on stream, hanging out with us chuckleheads tonight, just getting the word out. And you already got a couple new backers, right? So it's but that getting out of your comfort zone, getting on Kickstarter, the thing that we're scared of is exactly the thing that attracts people to us, because we're out there doing it where most people are kind of sitting on their dreams. And that is just an incredibly attractive thing. And I usually find that even if this is a concern of creators, it is usually the creator that is the bottleneck, like, or the creative team that is the bottleneck, as Rob is sort of finding, not the audience that is going to burn out first.
Right. So I have so much to say about this. In terms of the bottleneck thing, that's part of the reason why I've diversified. I have several different things going. And I mean, even Rob has 2 different main series going. That's 2 different art teams, which increases how fast he can put stuff out. But okay, so at the risk of summoning him by saying his name, I want to invoke Pat Shand here a little bit. But a few years ago, he was publicly talking about, and he talked to me about how, like, oh, I'm at, 4 or 5 campaigns a year right now, and I don't know if I can push that more because I don't want to burn out my audience. Look at what he's doing now. He's running like 20 plus campaigns a year.
Yeah, sometimes 3 at a time.
He's literally never not on Kickstarter. And from my own personal experience, I had never before a few months ago, I had never launched sooner than a month after the previous one had ended. The last 2 launches, including the one I just did, I hadn't even received the Kickstarter money from the previous Kickstarter yet before I launched again.
Wow.
And while I have my own opinions and my own thoughts and my own, like comparison is, we talk about that and how we can get in our heads about stuff. But if you look at this campaign and the last campaign, I doubt that anyone in this room would tell me that those were abject failures. I mean, those made their money back. I mean, I didn't lose money on those campaigns. And I launched before people could catch their breath. I was back on Kickstarter and I plan to do it again. I'm launching after Modern Mythology Medusa ends. 4 days later, I'm launching Dragon Grit #2.
Wow.
And I know it's 4 days later because I had to confirm with Kickstarter before they would approve the project so I could start getting followers. They needed to know exactly when I was going to launch it, or else they weren't going to let me get that approved while I still had one live. And so I guess what I'm saying is like exactly what Tyler said. Like, if you're afraid of burning people out, if they like your thing and they want more of your thing, they'll be pumped to get more of your thing. The people who are following your series, No Spell Lasts Forever, who want more, they read issue 2. They were psyched about it. They're excited for issue 3. If you come back in a few months with issue 4, they're going to be losing their minds. They're going to be excited. They're going to want that, right? Now, if you have people who are saying, "Oh, you just asked us for money," those are not people who really care about your thing.
Yeah, and they don't understand how comics work.
That's like, I mean, the person, who told me that, the last person who told me that was my grandma. Because on my first Kickstarter, she backed it. And then the second one, she's like, "I thought you already kickstarted your comic career." and I was like, "Grandma, please don't give me more money." But I mean, seriously, like, people who care about your stuff, they're gonna be pumped. They're gonna want more. And I think this is actually a very eye-opening conversation for me. Like Tyler said, I mean, it's all a matter of perspective. And if you ask someone like Pat Chan, the reason I bring that up is he's launching all the time, and he just had his best launch ever. He did a campaign. Now, we could get into not safe for work stuff, and that's like a whole can of worms. But he just had his best launch ever, and it was running while another campaign was going, and he was like on the heels of another thing, and so there's something to that. And I also would just like to put in here that the absolute best way to get more Kickstarter backers is to be on Kickstarter, because you can find people at conventions, you can find people through the direct market, but the people who are native to the platform are the people who are going to convert the best. That they just always are. Because if someone has to create a Kickstarter profile to back your thing, that's a barrier that could prevent them from backing it. Now, maybe you're the person who brings them onto the platform and then they become a Kickstarter backer, but launching more is going to build. When I launched Dragon Grit, I added 200 people to my mailing list. Wow. And I had 250 people who had never backed one of my campaigns before. Wow. That was like a 10% growth in my audience. And so, to me, fear is the mind killer, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's just, this reminds me, just like in thinking about the podcast, and I've been doing it coming up on 10 years next year. God, oh my goodness. But but I think about how many like assumptions and myths and just like common wisdom that how we thought the whole Kickstarter crowdfunding thing was going to work, and how many of them, like, when these assumptions get tested, audience burn. Oh, you can't launch more than X number of times a year because your audience will get burned out. It's like, actually, that's probably wrong. The audience burnout is something that you should be far less concerned about than going into obscurity or disappearing for months at a time, when there's an audience that is there waiting to find the stuff that we're creating. So yeah,
and that kind of goes back to the Pat Chan thing. Is like, he's always there, he's always relevant, he's always on Twitter, he's X now, I guess. He's always on Facebook. Like, he is everywhere. Like, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's watching now, waiting to be invited on. But you know what I mean? Like, he's even in my book right now. Like, he's one of the guest writers. Like, being relevant, being on top, like, he's always there. That's that plays to the whole, like, you just need to be in front of everybody at all times to be relevant. Because once even if you're gone for like 2 months, sometimes like you're like, you come back and you're like, oh, I have no traction, I got to build that back up. Even
Well,
posting on Facebook once a day, that helps you stay relevant. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. But something when many years ago, like 10, 12 years ago, when I was trying to be a freelance copy editor in another life, I had a mentor who told me that the most important thing to do as someone trying to get work from people is to remind them that you exist.
Yes.
And I think that fully applies to building an audience. You know, they got to remember. That's why I send out an email every single week, and you do too, and that's great. And I think some people are even afraid of sending out an email every week because they think they're going to be bothering people. But if they care, if they like what you're doing, they're going to be excited. I have a great open rate on my emails, and I do one every week. You know.
Yeah. I
All
mean,
right,
it makes
Sarah.
so much sense. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, Sarah, we're gonna wrap this up here, but just what?
Can I say one thing before you?
Oh,
wrap it
yeah,
up?
go ahead, James. Sorry.
I made a note of a phrase you used, and you used it more than once. You said that you were worried about burning out the same group of people.
Yeah.
So that tells me that you think that you're going to go after the same 100 or 150 audience, your readers over and over. So, which is obviously, that's kind of a hint at a limited mindset in there somewhere. So I would kind of push you to, as you're thinking about other Kickstarter campaigns, is to sit down with others or map out how you're going to grow your audience.
Yeah.
And kind of give yourself a little bit of a plan to follow so you can start to creep those numbers up. And my guess is there's maybe buried in your head somewhere is, well, once I'm at 300 backers, that's when I'm less worried about burnout, which is that's probably not true because you're going to be worried about it then too. But I think you need to start getting yourself to move towards that vision of growing your audience, which might help you overcome that hurdle of burning out the same group.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense because it does feel like that. And I do kind of think like, oh, well, if I were getting this many backers for each project, then I wouldn't be so anxious about this.
Can I want to just put something in there really quick. One of my best friends in the world is Curtis Clow. I talk to him all the time. Does Beastlands. He's been on the Comics Launch podcast as well. He recently had a campaign where he fell short of 1,000 backers, which is what he has been hitting on some of his more recent campaigns. And he felt like, oh, I just really need to hit that 1,000 backer number. That's when I'm going to be singing, 1,000 backers. And it's like, I'm sitting here thinking like my best thing ever was 600 something. And that, and I'm thinking, like it's all relative. You're never going to feel like it's enough is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
You're never going to feel like it's enough.
Yeah, there's always going to be that ladder that you're climbing.
Yeah. And I think it feels like, I mean, it makes so much sense because I think the worry is that I just don't have enough people. I don't have a big enough audience yet to support doing more campaigns. But I think it's probably the opposite. The more campaigns I do, the more people I'll bring in. And maybe I've even been holding myself back a little bit, not doing more campaigns the last couple of years. So it makes a lot of sense.
How many launches are you going to do next year, Sarah?
At least 2.
All right. And you're going to feel great about doing those too.
Yes.
Awesome.
I have been with the Mastermind since its inception. Loyal follower here. Tons of value in this group. I wouldn't be where I am as a creator without it. What I love about it is that these conversations energize me, but it also keeps me grounded. I can tend to have a lot of ideas and not really know the steps to take to implement them. So I found that this has been invaluable for forcing me to keep my head in the clouds, but one foot on the ground, hopping forward.
I've lost track at this point. This is my 4th or 5th session with Mastermind, but I found it absolutely irreplaceable over these last 2 years, just from a mentality and a support system. So I'm a huge believer in this, and everybody new that's here, I think you made a good choice.
What I get from the group is encouragement, and just the positivity that we get from this every time is very helpful because it can be draining sometimes.
Definitely have seen revenues increase and profits. I just want to keep that ball rolling and snowballing and have a great time.
I really like the support of the group to make me feel a little bit less terrified of people looking at me and judging the things that I'm making. And I found that this group has been great for that.
As far as what I get from this group, it's a lot of different things. Structure is one of them. I have a hard time focusing a lot of times, and this group helps me keep accountable.
Every time I come, it's been a great experience. It's the inspiration, not just in terms of good attitude and a good vibes, but seeing where I could get to if I keep persisting.
A lot of it is cheering myself on and helping others when I see them struggling.
I'm just excited about the connections, just for soaking up sponge like what everybody else is going through creatively.
To Tyler, we were con buddies in the early days, just learning from him, and as he's grown, kind of riding that wave along with him. The reason I am here is because I just want to get better at this stuff and learning from other people's successes.
My children's book series that originated from a seed that Tyler put into my, and I think it was the first time he was like, I would like to see what you would like to share with the world, Moana.
I gain a lot from trying to learn from everyone else's challenges and leveraging their knowledge. We didn't have to go through as much pain as the more experienced members have gone through.
It's really inspirational for me because I learned things that I hadn't even been thinking about yet, because I haven't gotten there in a project yet. And those kinds of things are super helpful for when they do come up.
The Mastermind group is people that just want to take the focus a little further and are just a little bit more, I don't want to say obsessed, but a little bit more skin in the game, right?
And I learn a lot from all the creators here, and I think I get just as much, if not more, from everyone else's hot seats and issues than I do my own. The encouragement and the support system that I get through this is why I keep coming back.
If you'd like to meet once a month with a group of serious, like-minded creators to talk about your projects and creative business for mutual support and accountability, go to comicslaunch.com/mastermind and get on the interest list.